Welcome to the Iconic sponsored session, Securing SCADA and Operations Technology for the water and wastewater industry, what every operation needs to know and plan for. My name's Amanda Gordon. I'm the Senior Marketing Programs Manager here at Iconics. And before I turn things over to the presenters today, just want to go over a few things. If you have any questions at any time, please type them into the Teams chat window, and we will answer those questions at the end of the webcast. Let me introduce you to our presentation team today. We have Paul Carter, who's the Mid-Atlantic Area Manager for Iconics, and we also have a special guest speaker, Andy Krapf, who's the Director of Operations Technology for Loudoun County Sanitation Authority. Now, Paul's going to kick it off for us today. So, Paul.
Great. Thank you very much, Amanda. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I want to thank you very much for joining us for this important topic and webinar today. I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about Iconics. And what we'll do today is I'm going to do a very quick introduction of Iconics, and then I'm going to let Andy take over and talk about some of the things that he does relative to securing a complete system. And then I'll be back toward the end and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about the way a company like Iconics provides tools and capabilities for our clients in the water and wastewater industry to be able to secure their systems. What you're seeing here is a quick overview of Iconics. We're headquartered in Foxborough, Massachusetts, been around since 1986. We operate all over the world in hundreds of countries and with many, many partners with hundreds of thousands of installations. We're very well partnered with Microsoft and have been recognized by Microsoft many times. And we cover a variety of different industries, which I'll touch a little bit more about in the next slide. Just kind of real quickly, we kind of break our solution bucket into various different silos. On the left-hand side of the display screen, our HMI SCADA solution, which is all of your visualization, your alarming, all those types of things is handled in a product bucket we call Genesis 64. We have a real-time historian called HyperHistorian. And then we do some specific analytical things with all the data that comes in out of the historian. And then also, if you find that a cloud-based deployment is part of your future, we do have an entire IoT piece. We've been recognized by Microsoft, one of the leaders in that space. And we take all of the information, everything we collect out of these various different platforms, and then we present it visually. And we can present data in any type of visual type of glass, whether it's a computer, a tablet, a watch, hands-free headsets, smartphones, all those different types of things for getting information about your operation, real-time information about your operation. As I mentioned, we're deployed in many, many industries, from manufacturing to building automation, water and wastewater. We work very closely with some different government agencies and military agencies, the oil and gas industry, transportation industry, things like airports and those types of things, train systems. So a variety of different applications. The beauty of that is that solutions that may seem to be specific to one industry, we standardize into our product and they become available to all industries. So it's a really powerful solution set that we offer to our client base. We find that our products are ideal for critical applications. We have a lot of systems deployed in things like data centers, public transportation systems, water and wastewater, airports. And if you recognize the top picture, the top view of the picture there, that actually is the top view of the Pentagon. The Iconics solution runs all of the operations related to the Pentagon. And to be able to do that, we've got to really stay close with the standards for security that are recommended by the Pentagon and the Defense Information Security Services. When you think about securing SCADA, we look at this as really kind of being a multi-domain process, and the big picture is all of the infrastructure and the operational domain of the water and wastewater system. You've got all your communications and IT infrastructure, your control systems, all your procedures, your processes, your methods. And then a company like Iconics, we're the company that develops the application that kind of sits in the middle or sits within this entire infrastructure. And so our responsibility is to put forth a system that is developed within a process that enable and has features that enables our client base to be able to implement the highest level of security within the entire infrastructure operation domain, and our product assists in allowing that to happen. And so this is kind of the way that you look at a securing a SCADA system. I'll come back a little bit later and I'll talk a little bit about what we do on the application side. But I would like to bring on Andy Krapf, who is the Director of Operations Technology for Loudoun Water. Loudoun Water is the county west of Washington, D.C. They serve hundreds of thousands of customers. We've worked with Andy for many years and have a really close working relationship. And I think that you'll find that Andy's perspective on this whole issue of security, he's really worked hard at this. I think you'll find that to be a very interesting contribution to this discussion. So Andy, I'll flip to the next slide and it's all yours.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. So I am Andy Krapf. I am the Director of Operations Technology here at Loudoun Water. Before we get too far into this, I do want to say that for the topics that I'm going to be talking about here, each of these could be a seminar unto its own. So we're going to be going through a handful of slides here fairly quickly, but I do want to just mention that there's a lot more depth to each one of these technologies, and I would encourage you to check them out whenever you can. So what you see on your screen right now is a generic cybersecurity model. We use this general approach to how we look at cybersecurity. It is definitely a defense in depth strategy and a lot of overlapping technologies, because one technology just does not cover everything that you need. So it's everything from relying on our corporate partners to deploying next generation firewalls, high availability firewalls. We look at things like network behavioral modeling and security and information and event management, SIMs. Privilege access management is another technology that is deployable within an OT environment. Intrusion detection and prevention is always a hot topic these days. Vulnerability scanning, along with all the traditional things that we all do for network hygiene. So enterprise class antivirus, configuration management, change management, and those domain level controls like deploying Active Directory, global security policies, and enforcing network segmentation. All of those are really critical to an overall generic OT cybersecurity model. So as we get into the first technology topic that's available, so let's talk a little bit about network behavioral modeling. So within our model, we have the ability to deploy technology that listens on our network using span ports. You could use a network tap to really get to learn what normal looks like on our network. And these are becoming more and more prevalent within the industry. And effectively what's going on here is your technology is learning through the use of either artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms to realize what normal is, so it can alert based on what is abnormal. It develops an asset inventory because you can't protect what you can't see. And again, by using models in those AI machine learning realms, it decides what is not normal. Now, what's great about those models is all of them can be tuned to your environment. So a particular vendor will do their best to come up with something that works well, but it won't cover all instances. And in some cases, analysts may have to go in and tweak them slightly to make it more appropriate for your environment. And in the end, what's really nice about this is it doesn't require a malware signature like a lot of traditional products do, and it will integrate with a lot of the other cybersecurity tools that are out there, such as a SIM or a log aggregation system. So it's a great technology to deploy. To follow on with that is the SIM, the Security Information Management Event Management System. So these are becoming much more prevalent as well in the OT space. Traditionally, you see them in the IT space. It really has an important role because it can aggregate logs from across your network. And it's not just syslogs, because a lot of OT devices don't generate syslogs, but they do generate SNMP traps. And most of the SIMs that are out there will log those SNMP traps. So you do have a means of cataloging events that are going on within your systems. And again, SNMP, highly recommend using SNMP v3 because it is much more secure than an SNMP v1 or 2 type system. The log retention is based on your requirements, not based on what the vendors might say. You can tune this to however you want. If you need a year's worth of logs, if you only need a month's worth of logs, you can certainly tune that to your needs. One really important piece of this is that a good SIM will normalize date timestamps between the different endpoints that are out there. So if you do have an event that is going on, you've got that common frame of reference to really get into the forensic side of things and understand what happens. Many of the new SIMs that are out there have the ability to integrate with machine learning algorithms and to also create alerting rules based on regex expressions or other criteria that you define. So they're really flexible and can be as sophisticated or as simplistic as you really want them to be. It depends on how much effort you want to put into them. And what's nice about it is, again, you can tailor up dashboards to allow you to visualize your data in a number of different ways. And again, to your environment, not based on what the vendor decides they want to give to you. Another technology that's out there that should be considered is asset and configuration management. One of the big aspects is you can't protect what you don't know is there, right? You have to be able to see it. So having asset management and configuration management is really critical. And there are a lot of systems that are out there, especially in the OT space. They're really starting to do this well. And I could rattle off a bunch of them. I'm not here to advocate for one vendor or the other, but it's definitely something worthwhile to take a look at. So again, passively listening on span ports, right? We don't want to get out there and put undue traffic on the networks. Good products like this will be able to distinguish between OT type assets and IT type assets. And that's really critical because there are some things that OT assets don't like active querying is definitely something that you don't want to go after your OT assets for unless it's very controlled. You know, it's easy to do a denial of service attack on an OT device if you flood it with too many requests. So we certainly want to make sure that we're monitoring and throttling how much we talk to each one of those. Some of these platforms also provide the ability to leverage malware signatures, but they do require an external connection to periodically update those signatures. So it is not something that you can isolate necessarily within your environment unless you can bring in signatures via file transfers. Some you can, some you can't. It just depends on the technology and the provider that's out there. And finally, with configuration management tools, some of these are really tailored toward monitoring what the configurations are within your OT assets, specifically PLCs. There are some that are out there that will benchmark your PLC programs and then tell you when a change has been made so you can validate whether that change was accurate or not, and even down to the element that was changed. So there's some really good platforms that will provide that ability to do that. The next technology that's out there that does not particularly get a lot of traction in the OT world, but it is definitely applicable, is privileged access management. So privileged access management is exactly what it sounds like. It is a technology that will help you manage who has access to the privileged accounts on your network. There are a handful of these systems and they keep growing every single day. But the general idea behind this is you have an automated system that can manage and monitor your privileged accounts, and in most cases can automatically rotate your credentials. So, for example, if you have domain accounts that have elevated privileges, or local accounts even on machines that have elevated privileges, this type of a system can actually change those passwords daily if you so desire, or weekly. And the idea behind this is you prevent lateral movement in your network because your privileges are constantly changing. If an attacker gains a foothold because they have a set of credentials and those credentials change every day, their window of opportunity is extremely limited. Some of these technologies will also allow you to remotely access a system and then record those remote access sessions for auditing purposes later on. And that's also a great tool to have in the event of a breach or a rogue actor, if you will. Go ahead, Paul, go to the next slide, please. The next slide here, it deals with automated vulnerability scanning. And now this is a technology that we are, in the OT world, we're a little bit wary of because it usually involves active scanning. So again, as I mentioned before, active scanning in the OT world is something that is easily used to shut down a system. If you query things too quickly or too often, the OT devices don't like that. So active scanning, automated vulnerability scanning like this has to be certainly tailored toward differentiating between IT and OT type devices to make sure that you're not overburdening those OT devices. There has to be protections that are in place, and there are several systems out there that will differentiate again between an IT type system and an OT type system. These systems typically require updates from outside sources like the National Vulnerability Database or feeds from other cybersecurity vendors, Intel feeds, pick your poison. There's a lot of them that are out there. But what's nice about it is you can schedule these reports and they will generate the alerts or the results of the scans to you on a regular basis, which then becomes the basis of a vulnerability mitigation program, perhaps. So it's a good benchmark to go against, and you can monitor your progress to make sure that things are moving accordingly. So in conclusion, for my portion of this, I just want to say one quick thing, that there are a lot of technologies that are out there, and that there's no one solution for any environment, and that we should always work together with our OT, our IT partners to make sure that we are deploying good technologies and sharing best practices back and forth between the groups in order to get a good comprehensive solution. So with that, Paul, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andy. I was on mute. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you all. So thank you very much, Andy. That provides, I think, a really interesting perspective on the way that systems are secured. And so I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into some of the things that that a supplier like us do as a SCADA supplier, what we do to provide Andy capabilities to integrate in with all the things that he does in his systems. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do. To kind of start out, there's a variety of different standard practices that a SCADA vendor has to do to be able to, first of all, provide code and program that is not compromised in any way. And there's a variety of different things that we do, such as having very secure facilities, using things like source code obfuscation. We do a lot of training on cybersecurity, and I can tell you that that our company tests us all the time. I probably get 1 or 2 false emails a week testing us to see whether or not we're paying attention to phishing attempts and those types of things that we've heard so much about in the news. But this is just a common operational procedures that we have to do to be able to provide our clients with highly secure applications, and obviously being ISO certified so that we have the right process management in place for doing these types of things. We also are very active with something called Industrial Control Systems CERT, Cyber Emergency Response Team, which is associated with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And this is kind of a watchdog organization. And you can go to the ICS-CERT webpage, and they will list all of the various different industrial control system, both hardware and software vulnerabilities that have been identified. And if something does get identified in any of our products, then we work very closely with the Department of Homeland Security to handle and fix that vulnerability. And then once that is made available, then that information is published on the ICS-CERT website. So this is a really good organization that helps to keep the visibility of potential vulnerabilities exposed in the marketplace. As would be expected, integrated into our product is a security server. And within this security server, and it is built into the product, it wasn't patched on or added on, it was integrated right into the product. And so you can establish users and groups within this and provide all of the basic, what you would expect, security functionality and password management and those types of things. In working with Andy, what Andy does is Andy uses the iconic security server as a second factor authentication for his users and operators. You can use this as a federated security server if you so desire, but there's multiple ways that people do that. And one of the real values of this is that you can apply this and dig into any individual kind of submodule within the product and decide what any individual user can do, all the way down to the point of allowing or not allowing users to open other applications or being able to change things like set points and stuff. So we can really build a very high level of security with a very, very flexible and powerful integrated security server. So this is a very important piece of the pie. I'll also talk a little bit here about something we call platform services. The screen on the right, the picture on the right is kind of a graphic of that configuration dialog. And that's kind of the back-end glue that ties all the various different pieces of the SCADA application together. And what we do is put a lot of different functionality here where, as part of an overall security profile or procedure, you can do certain things. And so, for example, you can disable certain types of interfaces. And you'll see as I kind of scroll through these, you can disable things like point managers, and you can password, add another level of password protection to communications within the SCADA application. You can limit which clients can log into the system, so you can specifically allow them or deny them clients, so somebody can't get a set of permissions and inadvertently log into the system. And we can also limit the various different server communications and which servers we can talk to. And so all of this is designed to provide an owner of this type of system a lot of flexibility in controlling the threat vectors that could attack a SCADA system. And again, just lots and lots of different settings that you can get into to try and control this access. I will, if you're interested, offer that on our website there is a highly secure HMI SCADA and Automation Systems white paper, and it will document and share with you a lot of these best practices that we have proposed over the years and that we've worked on with our clients across all industries. And I would encourage you to go up and download that. There's no charge to download that white paper. We may ask you for your name and email address or something like that, but please feel free to go up and gather that information. I'll also mention that we also work with outside testing agencies. I mentioned earlier that we work with the United States Pentagon. They have a security testing implementation guide that we go through that process. And we have to do that for not only the Pentagon, but numerous other government agencies. We've also had some clients that have hired white hacker type companies to stress the application, trying to figure out how to compromise one of our systems. And anytime we get any of those information, we get that patched, and then we make that patch publicly available to everybody, so that again everybody benefits from these types of situations and things that we work on. Okay, so just real quickly, you know, it's really important in securing these types of systems to be vigilant from the start. I think we've all heard plenty of horror stories about SCADA systems that have been compromised and some of the potential things that could have happened. You know, one of the basic things: don't expose any of your industrial control systems directly to the internet. Andy talked about the whole concept of defense in depth, and you saw in his initial slides that whole model of how he approaches security. We believe we provide you with a lot of the tools necessary to have a secure system, but they don't necessarily always come out of the box all set up and ready to go. It's really up to the individual client to implement them. And then please feel free, again, to grab that white paper. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much. We've got a few minutes to respond to anybody who has questions. And so I believe Amanda is monitoring the chat window. If any questions have come in, Andy or Amanda?
Yeah, I do have one and again, we have a couple minutes. So if you want to type it in now, now's the time. So this first one, I don't know, perhaps Andy can take a first pass at answering it, and maybe Paul, you can comment.
Okay.
But the question is, what would be the first steps you recommend a utility can take to determine if they are vulnerable to a cyber attack or determining if they are secure? What are common security issues you run into?
That is a big question.
All right, take it in pieces.
Yeah, so the first steps is you have to acknowledge that if you're asking this question, you probably are vulnerable. And we're all vulnerable in varying degrees, even the ones that have security measures that are put in place. But knowing that you're ready to take that step into figuring out how vulnerable you are is really important. There are a lot of resources that are out there that can help get you through that. So outside of the consultant world, which is always a good first step because there are quite a few of them that are out there. EPA has services that are available if you get on the list. DHS offers services, the FBI offers services, and it certainly is worthwhile to talk to them and see what would be right as a first step for your utility. There's a lot to be learned from what the IT side of the house does as well. We partner quite heavily with our IT counterparts here, even though the groups are separate. We learn a lot from each other, and I think that's really important in trying to get to the bottom of what your vulnerabilities could be.
Okay. Yeah, Paul, do you want to comment?
Yeah, what I was just going to comment about is one of the interesting areas of work that I do now is I get involved with clients who have older systems. Like it or not, a lot of places we're dealing with older architectures and older technologies, and helping them find a path to move those technologies forward. Some of the older software technologies are much more difficult to secure than some of the newer technologies. Just didn't have as strong a feature set, and so that's another thing to take into considerations is probably just take an audit of where your technology base is, and that will help as you begin to try and understand what you can do going forward.
All right, thanks, Paul and Andy. No other questions have come in. I would like to say that in addition to that white paper that Paul mentioned, we do have a bunch of free resources, including white papers and videos available on the Iconics booth, the virtual booth within the ACE show. So go ahead and check that out. And we hope you all learned a lot today. I know I did. And thank you all for taking the time to join us on this session.
Yeah, thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to spend it with you.